Ever since I was a youngin', I was into rapping. 20 years later and I'm still here yapping. Guess I got so much to say, so I'm trying to educate all of us. I hope together we can elevate. Time flies and our life is moving so fast. What's the forecast? Good vibes to be broadcast. So come and chill with me as we let the bad vibes blow past. This is Shout Out Podcast.
Hello good people and welcome back to the Shoutout Podcast. Today we have a very special episode because ever since the beginning of the podcast, we've had a lot of suggestions and requests to get someone from a church background, and we finally have one. And our guest today is a young dynamic pastor. He's well spoken. He's a well-composed. He has a very unique and interesting perspective on how he views life and many things within it. And I find that very interesting. He's been active in the ministry since 2003. And they currently, along with his wife, pastors at Kingdom Culture Church, which they founded in late 2012. Right. So they're reaching on their 10th year anniversary. Welcome to the Shoutout Podcast, Visasier.
Thank you. Yeah.
Since we last had that talk, I was very keen on following it up and having this podcast. And one thing that made it even more interesting was my brother-in-law Visato, who's also associate pastor at UBC in Koima. He was here just a few days back, and then we had this long conversation on I think a lot of similar things that we're going to talk about. So it just I think gave me a lot of extra talking points which I think will make this very interesting. So if you're ready to go, we'll start off with the shoutouts.
Sure,
I'll do the shoutout first. My shoutout today, actually, it's a personal shoutout, and it's more like an ad, but it's for my wife and me. Just completed our women's paying guest, which is, I don't know if you could see it in the background when the curtains were open, but yeah, it's a women's paying guest. Accommodates 19 people, and we serve food and all the basic amenities and facilities are available. Situated in a nice locality in Hafnagarajan or Kuda village. And so if any of you are interested in availing, joining, you can contact the number or share it with people who you think would be interested. So shout out to Serenity Women's PG.
Great, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were talking, I was thinking they can actually play tennis.
Yes, yes.
We bring our daughter 3 times a week
right.
to get her tennis coaching. So I do my shout out.
Yes, you
as
can.
Well.
Yeah.
So my shout out goes out to a group of an association that was founded in 2009. It's the Dimapur District Table Tennis Association. I'm a part of that, not an office bearer, but I play with the players there, and I know that they have struggled with things like facilities and finances, but they have just been persevering, and I think with whatever is available to them, they are doing a great job, and as much as possible organizing tournaments. And so my shout out goes out to DDTTA.
That's a nice shout out. Yeah. Okay. So we have a lot to talk about today, but as I always do in the beginning of the podcast, I let the guests talk about themselves a little bit in the sense of their childhood or their schooling, and just a little bit about yourself, so they also get to know you, from that angle.
Yeah, sure. Very much a local boy. Born, raised in Dimapur,
right.
And my entire schooling was done in what was then Christian English School.
Yes.
Now it is Christian Higher Secondary School, and so from class A to class 10, I was there. After my matriculation, I went to Patkai Christian College for 2 years for my pre-university. I think now it's called, it would be class 11, 12. That time it was PU first year, second year.
Yes.
And after that, I went to Delhi for my graduation. And after my graduation, went down to Bangalore for about 3 years of theological studies. And growing up, I don't know, just it was just hanging out with friends all the time, you know. And when we were small, playing marbles, flying kites in Burma camp. That's where I live. That's where I grew up, and you know, riding our bicycles, going into Assam to hunt, shoot birds. I was never able to shoot a single bird, and that's why I'm not a hunter. I'm a pastor. But and you know, just after school, it would just be riding our cycles, going to the river, swimming, and that's how I grew up.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating when you just say this, because it just reminds me also of how Dimapur has changed so much.
Oh yeah.
From what it used to be into this mini city, you know, thriving, bustling city that we now live in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very nice to have those memories flood back, because although you're elder than me, I mean, there's similar kind of experiences. Like I remember riding my cycle through town also. No cars. Like, I mean, we weren't worried about, you know, cars.
Exactly.
Like traffic as such, like that.
We are very careful even to let our daughter cross the gate. Our 9-year-old daughter.
Right.
But those days, you know, I don't want to say anything about my parents, but we know we were in school and we would just go off to Assam, you know.
Yeah.
And Katkati area, just hunting birds.
Yes.
And, you know, and swimming.
How do you feel about, like, I mean, when you say this, I mean, I keep saying this with obviously it's a different generation, so things are different, but like in this day and age, how, like, you know, we never let our children out of our sight for even a single moment, whereas like you just mentioned, half the time our parents had no idea what we were doing or where we were, you know, just so how times have changed also in that sense.
Well, times have changed. There's a lot more people,
right?
You know, traffic is crazy, and so I guess it comes with, you know, the change of you know, the lifestyle, population.
How did you you know, get into this, or just tell us the story of how you got interested in, you know, the studying theology, and like, you know, how did that happen? Because that's not usually I mean, I won't say it's not common, but like, you know, how does that happen?
For me, I mean, growing up until my, you know, when I was in my late teens, I think I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. When I was about 18, 19, I got interested in, you know, things of God, and discovering who God is. And from that moment, I have wanted to be in, you know, what do we call ministry, and very specifically in church ministry. And so I decided from that time on that this is what I'm going to do. And so even when I was doing my graduation and all that, I knew that eventually I would study theology and go into church ministry.
So I mean, after you did your studies, how was the process of like coming back and getting into what you wanted to do full time now?
So I grew up in a Baptist church.
Right.
That's where all my, you know, family members.
Same church, Town Baptist church.
And so it was the most normal thing for me to come back and serve. And obviously the church invited me to be, you know, in the church ministry. And so I joined in 2003, active church ministry. And that's when my journey started, you know, and after 3 years of theological studies.
So it was right after you finished studies that you came back and immediately got into it. Okay.
And experience all kinds of things, you know, being in church, working with all kinds of people. It has its challenges.
Definitely.
But it is just something that I've always wanted to do since my late teens. And so there was no question of, you know, doing anything else. It was, people talk about calling, and so for me there was a very clear sense that I'm called to this kind of
so it was like a clear-cut vision that you had, sort of, that you knew whatever it is. Why I asked you that question earlier about the studying theology is because you know, I mean, I know a lot of friends who've studied it just for the sake of, you know, and so I was just asking, like, what kind of pushed you into that direction? that means you did have a clear vision that time that you really wanted to sort of get into this. You knew you were going to.
That's how it was for me. Yeah.
Right now, like I said in the introduction, you are currently pastoring along with your wife Kevi, who's also here, at Kingdom Culture Church, which you founded in 2012.
Right.
10 years reaching.
Yeah.
Tell us about the journey about that, how it started.
Well, we got married, and things changed.
Right.
So I was not a part of that church anymore where I grew up.
Yes.
And after we got married, sometime after that, we did some training.
Okay.
So we went out and did some studies, some training, ministry. And then we came back to Nagaland in 2012.
Okay.
And in the school that we attended, the ministry school, a lot of people would tell us, you're going to go back and start a church. And that was, we joke about it, we laugh about it, and we say it wasn't even bottom of the list. Like it was not even on the list. Starting a church, it was not even on the list. But we came back and we really wanted to be part of an English church, English speaking church, and so we attended a few churches here and there. And that time we didn't have a lot of English churches.
Definitely.
And we saw the need, and so we spoke to a few other leaders, church leaders, and they encouraged us to just go ahead and start one. And so that's what launched us into this, whatever we are doing now.
Right. And 10 years, reaching, I'm sure you've had and faced a lot of challenges, and you just talk us through some of the ups and downs of the journey so far.
Yeah. I think one of the challenges is it's we are not part of a denomination. We are what we would be called an independent church.
Okay.
And so at least in Dimapur, I think people's minds are really changing about such independent churches coming up. But I think people are still wary. People are still nervous about going to such churches, and there is so much of this kind of thinking that we must go to our own tribal churches.
Correct.
And whether you understand the language or not, and if you are a woman who's married to a man who's from another tribe,
you must go there regardless.
Yeah, and we have met people like that,
right.
And they want to come, they want to be part of us, but they have to go follow the husband,
right.
even if they don't understand the language.
Right.
And so that is a challenge, but we have a lot of good people. We have met a lot of wonderful people who have been part of our journey, and so it's exciting.
I quickly want to add here, because when we first started talking about this podcast and about the possibility of you hopping on the podcast, I made it a point to come and visit your church that one Sunday, and
you were there one Sunday.
I have to honestly tell you, it was like a very, very pleasant experience for me. It was I thoroughly enjoyed the service. You were speaking that day, but just I was even prayed for that service. So it was like a very powerful moment for me, and then somehow felt like everything is related, and now having you on the podcast, and so it was a beautiful thing. Why don't you just share a little bit about what you do? Because I remember that day you were talking about like a mission outreach thing that you do with when you feed the hungry at the train station, things like that. If you want to share some.
Apart from our 3 services on Sunday, we have a Nagami service, we have an English service, and we have one more in the evening, which is kind of, we don't call it a youth service. It's maybe you can call it more youthful service. It's more casual, more intense, casual but intense. So that's what we do on Sundays, and once in a while we have midweek meetings. But one regular thing that we do is every Tuesday we go to the train station.
Right.
From the time we started the church way back in 2012, and soon after that, it's actually something very important for my wife was to go and feed the people on the streets. So we actually started with the traffic cops,
Okay.
and we would go around all the way from Fort Mile, the Central GL Junction,
Okay.
all the way to DC Court, and stopping at all traffic points and maybe giving them a packet of juice, and maybe
refreshments,
some
yeah, right.
samosa, and so that's how we started.
Okay.
And then we ended up in train station, and we used to go once in a while. But in 2016, the beginning of 2016 to now, we regularized it, and so we moved away from even just refreshments, snacks, to like a proper meal.
Okay.
So every Tuesday we are there at this train station in the evening, feeding especially the homeless. But we feed any hungry person. Sometimes these are
So
travelers,
regular people also, yeah,
travelers.
not just.
And sometimes when there is a bun or something like that, and the restaurants are closed, then we have had people like that
Okay.
who just come and stand in queue. They get a hot plate of food, and so we just say we feed whoever is hungry, and we get to know them. We pray for them. We have had a few people who have died, people we know at the train station, and so we meet all sorts of people, and we are not there to teach them a lot of things. We just want to go there, show them love, and let them know that there's a God who loves them. And this we actually call them our friends at the train station. So that's what we do every week.
And I'm assuming that most of these people would not be Christians, right? I mean, like of
Yes, most are not Christians, and interestingly, sometimes people actually complain about what we do. One complaint we will hear is, why do you feed Hindus and Muslims and not Christians? Another would be, why do you feed non-Nagas? And the answer we give them is because Hindus, Muslims, and non-Nagas also feel hungry, and that's why we feed them.
100%.
Yeah. And so we do face criticism, but we feel this is what the God we believe in would do, and so this is what we do. Yeah.
I mean, I believe that's a beautiful and wonderful thing that you guys do. Would you consider that to be like one of the main things that you are like, or are there some other things that?
As far as our outreach is concerned, that is our main thing.
I would love to join one day and just help out.
Please
also.
come. Yeah.
Definitely.
We are there anywhere between 6 to 6:30.
Yeah,
that's when we are there. And
definitely try and make it happen.
Yeah.
We have quite a few things to talk about today.
Right.
Obviously, most of it is like church-related topics and issues. But before we get into all that, just one, just like a general question, because we spoke on this a little bit that day, and I found it quite interesting what you had to say on this. Is like, what is your view, and how would you define spirituality personally for you?
That's a big question.
Yeah, it's big, but then we had the talk that day, so I'm just like...
Yeah. I was thinking about a question that a lot of theological students will come and ask me, when they are doing their research.
Okay.
They'll send me questionnaires and sometimes, face-to-face interviews. And one of the questions that most of them will ask is, how do you make your church people more spiritual? And I usually give them the answer, I don't try to make them more spiritual, I try to make them more unspiritual. And so, so I just say it for kind of maybe shock value, and then I kind of break it down and explain what I mean by that. For me, spirituality is very earthly, and so I like to talk about being earthly and how we must live our lives expecting God anywhere, even in the things of the world. For example, I believe God is present in the church building, and when we pray together, when we sing worship songs, God is present, and I meet God there. But God is just as present at the stadium where I go and play table tennis, and God is there.
Right.
And one place is not more spiritual than the other. Yeah. And so God is everywhere. We live in what I like to call a God-bathed world. It's like saturated with the presence of God.
Right.
And so everywhere we go, we are in the presence of God. And so every place becomes sacred. And so I must learn to meet God in the religious activities that we do, but I must also learn to find God in other things that we do, whether it is, watching a movie, or whether it is playing sports, listening to music, and not necessarily Christian music. I remember somebody who used to be part of our church. They have left as missionaries now, but he loved carpentry. And he made a comment once, and he said, when I do carpentry, I feel the presence of God.
Wow.
And so for him, that was his connection to God. So for me, spirituality is not just, religious activities.
Right.
And we must do those things. We must pray, we must
of course
read the Bible, and all of that. But what if we begin to embrace other aspects of life? Because we, in church, we teach people how to read Bible. We teach people how to pray. But statistics have shown us that that's a very small percentage of our lives.
Right.
And the vast majority of our lives, we are doing
all these other things, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so are we to say that God is absent from most of our lives and only present when we do these religious things? And I like to say no. Like, we are to meet God everywhere.
Right.
Like when we eat a nice meal, it's like, wow, thank you, God.
I mean,
So that's how I see spirituality.
Right. I mean, that's a very interesting perspective. You shared a little bit about this the other day when we met, and it got me thinking also. And just this short story that you just shared about your friend, or the person who found, feels the presence of God when he's doing something he loves.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just amazing. How nice it is that
Yeah.
when you're doing something that you love, you can feel the presence, or I think our a lot of disclaimers are going to be here on this podcast today, because obviously the whole when it comes to the discussion about church and religion, it is sort of a very sensitive area. And so a lot of people do get offended, but I feel comfortable talking to you, and I feel comfortable talking about many things that I feel we should talk about. But as long as we're doing it in a respectful way.
Right.
But one thing I feel about the majority of our people and their concept of Christianity is it seems to be a little off, in the sense generalizing a lot, but going to church, giving your tithes, and just doing that sort of like, unfortunately, that seems to be for a lot of people what it qualifies to be a Christian. And unfortunately, I don't see it that way, and it seems to be quite a trend now. What's your opinion on that?
See, I remember you mentioning, what are good things the church is doing, especially the church in Nagaland.
Oh yeah, let's
what are areas where the church can grow, or what are, maybe, to use a negative word, what are some failures? There are a lot of church critics these days, and they're not afraid to voice out their opinions about church. And I think rightly so sometimes, that the church has a lot of failures. But I was thinking, like, what if we wake up tomorrow morning and all the churches in Nagaland have disappeared?
Okay.
Would it be better for society? And some people may say yes, but I think not. So with all of its failures, weaknesses, struggles, I think the presence of the church is good for us, good for our society, I think it is positive. And on the other hand, one of the struggles that I find, even as a pastor myself, and I'm sure in other churches, and I hope it connects to your question about, what it means to be a Christian and all that.
Right.
I think we are struggling in equipping people, teaching people how to live life outside the church. And there are people who may be very good in church, and when it comes to church activities,
Right.
but how are you to live as a government officer? How are you to live your life as a businessman? I think that's where we are kind of struggling in equipping people. And so when we have too much of this is spiritual, this is secular kind of mindset, and we teach like that, and the problem is that people begin to think, whether consciously or unconsciously, they begin to act out a life where, their life is so divided. And so they can be very good in church and faithful tithe payers.
I totally understand.
And
yes.
very regular in church, but then they can go to their jobs
And
and
be
be
very unchristian,
corrupted,
yes.
very corrupted,
Right. Exactly.
because God is not interested in that, according to this faulty,
This whole
faulty,
image of what it means.
Yeah,
to,
exactly.
I totally get that.
And so I can be corrupt in my office as long as I'm very good in church. I can skip my office work because even though people need me there, and because I am serving God in church, singing in the choir or whatever,
Right.
because that is serving God. But
All these other things.
but I think we have to change that mindset and begin to think, no, you serve God
Right.
in the hospital, you serve God in the courtroom, you serve God in your government office, and what you do there is your service to God, and that is your ministry.
I like I just mentioned about how Sato was here the other day, and one point that he made, which I felt just relates to what we're just talking about today, is like also our our perception of or how we view people,
Right.
and what is a good person, in today's society.
Yeah.
Like we're saying, like a person who goes to church regularly on Sundays, and then gives his tithes, and helps out during the programs and stuff like that. Whereas he could, like at home or at work and away from church, be a totally different person. Whereas someone who's unable to come to church regularly, and or can't even pay his tithes regularly, but could be a very good person, the character of him, helping his family or friends or whatever he's doing that's busy keeping him unable to, the perception and this image that we're painting of what it means to be a good Christian today, and in our society, I feel is it's very misconstrued.
Yeah. Speaking about this whole image of being a Christian, I think even for us as leaders, pastors, at some level of leadership,
Right.
I think that is a big issue. The church or Christians being authentic and even being vulnerable. And so I think there's a lot of pressure that a Christian must look like this. And so there's this image that we have, and we don't want anyone else to see that, we also have struggles, that we make mistakes. One Christian leader said, even leaders have toilets, and they poop and they use it.
Right.
It's not like leaders have no mess. We do have messes in life. We do
Right.
have issues.
That's what
And,
makes us human.
Yeah, and I want to say this, that I think the Christian culture, one of the dangers is that we tend to idolize leaders, and these days I think we have too much of celebrity leaders, celebrity pastors even.
Okay.
And I think it's a real danger for us. Like for example, for me as a pastor, if there's too much of that, and I don't know I begin to forget myself that I'm human, just
Right.
like anyone else. So, and this image that people have of me or of any other leader, there's so much pressure to just keep that facade on all the time, and we wear a mask and we don't show our weakness to anyone. We are not vulnerable. We are not authentic.
Right.
But no, like we struggle, and like I have made mistakes. As a leader, I have created messes and made wrong decisions as a leader and as a human being. I have made wrong decisions and decisions that have really hurt people, and where I have had to even stand before our own congregation and apologize and kind of tell them, hey, sorry, I messed up. And so it is a journey of I think we just need to learn to be authentic, be vulnerable, and admit to each other and to ourselves that we are flawed people, that we are broken in different ways, and it's a journey of grace and mercy and forgiveness. And so sometimes people have such a view of a leader that when they mess up, the disappointment is so great, and the disappointment is so great because they have put the leader on such a high pedestal. And so it's either like, I cannot believe that you did this, like I can never forgive you, or go to the other extreme and say, no, this person would never do something like that, and so living in denial. And I think both are dangerous.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And so I think I was actually thinking about this, that in leadership, especially pastors, the more we grow as leaders and the more people get connected with you,
Right.
or to use church language, the more your congregation grows, I think it's important for us to remember that the important thing is not that more people listen to me. I think that we must realize that as we grow in leadership, we must listen more to people.
To people.
Yeah. So it's not like more people are listening to me, but I have to learn to listen to people, because it is you can have this delusion about self, about life, about people, and when you don't listen
Very
to
normal human trait.
and to listen to people who love you and who will correct you, then
That
there's
tends to happen
disaster.
often.
Yeah.
Also. Just continuing with the conversation that we're having, like I said, many disclaimers have to be made. One is the fact that it may sound like I'm, sort of like attacking the church and what it is, but
Go ahead.
it's nothing like that. It's just the simple fact of the matter is that we live in a Christian state, and we all know about how large a role church plays in our society,
Yeah.
and how huge an impact it has on so many things, even if it might not admit, like things like politics and everything else. So with that being said, I feel that there's this disconnect between church. I'm generalizing just the entire,
right.
but there's a huge disconnect, especially with the youth, and with just to a large extent the majority of the public with the church, for whatever reason it is. So I just want to talk about some of those things, like why does this seem to be there? We can touch on a few topics, but one thing that I feel is that our church here tends to be a little too rigid, in the sense, honestly, just speaking things like this, I don't think like people would have been comfortable talking like this up until very recently. So just being able to address or ask questions, or just figure out why things are like this, and why some issues are, their decisions are that on some certain issues. It, for me, it feels like, I feel I should be able to ask my spiritual leaders, or the people who are, any question.
Yeah.
And if I have some valid points, I hope that there would be like wise answers coming back to me, to either make me change my mind or agree to disagree, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So, Bridget, that is one of the reasons. What is your take on this?
Unfortunately, over the years, the church has been, and I don't mean every individual
Of
church,
course, we can't.
but generally speaking, I think the church has been this one place where asking questions has really been discouraged. And you're not allowed to ask questions.
Right.
You believe this is what we believe, and you believe it. And if you don't believe it, then you're out. And so that leaves no room for people to ask questions, to raise their doubts.
Right.
And this is why a lot of people are leaving the church, even in the West. And it is happening here, and more of that will come. There is this whole movement of deconstruction. And so people are deconstructing a lot of things, like ideas that they had before, things that they were taught before. All of these things are being deconstructed.
Right.
So people are courageously asking questions, even about God, about church. And for me personally, and I don't know how well we do it, but at least we try in our church, is that we want people to ask questions. And the point is not agreement,
Yes.
but
yes,
it is
of
like,
course.
let's listen to each other, and we try to understand one another. And I've had people come up to me after a sermon and tell me, Pastor, I don't really agree with what you said.
Fair enough.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
We are not going to kick you out just because you disagree
Exactly.
with my sermon. But they have a place there with us, and and it's like a family where you don't always agree.
Right.
We don't always agree with our parents. Siblings don't always agree with each other.
Of course.
But you're a family. You do life together, and you're on this journey together. And I think that's what church should be like.
Right. And like one common recurring comment that I hear, and I think I subscribe to this view also, is that right now, presently, like there's this worrying trend about how the church is becoming too, like all about the structure, and not about what it should actually be doing, which is sort of like
People.
healing people and reaching out to people, and more focused with a lot of other things. It sounds quite like harsh, but this is something that I've heard a lot.
Yeah.
Like people, and like I said again, like we're saying again, it's not to say that everyone is doing this, but this is like the vibe that we get, like about how it's becoming, I don't want to say materialistic, but like bigger churches and
Yeah.
but empty churches, but so
Yeah.
I feel that's one thing that we're sort of going astray also with.
Yeah. I think we all struggle in the sense of just learning to make the right decisions, navigating our way through different issues that we face. And definitely people versus structure is, I think, something that they are not really opposing each other. I think
Okay.
they are not on opposite sides. We can say our main concern is people, but we do need facilities. We
Yeah,
do
that-
we
yeah.
do need a building, and so all buildings are not bad.
Right.
No,
I definitely.
and on the other hand, people who are into buildings and we need to build this, we need to build that. I want to believe that they are doing that also because they want to provide a space where people can come and
Right.
maybe worship comfortably.
Yeah.
So
No, I 100% do not doubt their intentions.
Yeah.
What I mean to say is, but not to say that they're not doing it with bad
Right,
intentions,
right.
that they're
Yeah.
keep building new churches or bigger
Yeah,
churches.
yeah.
But I'm just saying the priority and of what the number one priority, like what would you say the number one priority would be? Would be to heal people, right?
No,
Or
it is,
to show-
it is people.
Exactly,
Obviously,
right. That is
people.
what I mean. Like, yeah.
And we do hear very ugly stories of what churches have done.
Right.
I mean, I'll just be honest about this and be blunt and maybe offend some people. But like when we want to construct a new building, and I remember one particular town, they had a huge church building, and they were demolishing it to build a bigger one. And the reason is that it's small for their congregation, that people cannot fit in. So my response to the people there were, then why don't you have 2 services? People can come one by one. I mean, they can take turns. Somebody come for the first service, some people come for the second one. Have 2 services instead of demolishing this huge building and building a bigger one, spending crores of rupees, and the church doesn't have enough money, so
falls
taxing
upon
the
the
people
right
and compulsorily deducting their
salary. Exactly.
And I think those practices are just not something that is
Yes.
godly.
Yes, I mean, I was definitely going to bring this point up also because I think one of the reasons, like why I'm saying, why is there a disconnect? Doesn't really help when churches do that also. Like like when they sort of voluntarily, impose this voluntary tax or that you're taking away a person's 1 month salary and also starts to get us wondering. Pondering on the whole definition of giving and
Exactly.
the meaning of giving.
Exactly.
And, right?
As you were speaking, I was thinking, like in the Bible, it says, "Be a cheerful giver."
Exactly.
But when
right,
the church practices this, we are not making people cheerful givers. We are
100%,
making them
yeah.
grumpy givers.
Yeah,
And
they are 100% grumpy givers. Most of them.
Yeah.
A lot of people. The fact that when you make it voluntary, I think that changes the whole.
right, and it calls out the magnanimity, the big-heartedness of people,
Exactly.
where they want to make a difference, and they willingly, sacrificially give. I think that's so much more honorable.
Right. Of late, now with elections just around the corner, and not to name or be specific or touch on any particular issue, but like I said earlier, the church is very influential in Nagaland. Whether they are directly doing it or not, they do influence politics in our state. And what is your view on how closely these two, like the church and the state, and their relation, their proximity, should they be totally separate? Should there be some sort of, first of all, what is your opinion on that?
I think it depends on our definition of politics. When we talk about politics as the life of people in a society, then I think definitely the church has a voice and something to say there.
Right.
But when we take
Let's talk about the literal,
when we
like
talk about the narrow definition of politics, which is like
the elections and
party politics,
exactly.
and then I think the church should stay away from that, in the sense of we don't endorse one party, we don't endorse one candidate, we don't try to definitely not try to start a Christian political party. I think we teach our people about being honest, being just, and let them decide who they want to vote for. And so, like, for example, I actually I don't know what you think, I don't know what people think, but
Right.
I think Clean Election by NBCC
Right.
is a great initiative.
I do want to talk about this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I am very much pro clean election. If by clean election we mean that the election process has to be clean, it has to be done fairly and honestly, then I'm all for that. But and I know NBCC is not saying we support this candidate, we support that candidate. I know they are not saying that, and so I don't think we should get confused about those things. And so the church has a place in politics.
Definitely. So I mean, the clean election campaign is something that I also support, obviously, as I feel like any normal right-thinking person should do. A few things on this, like why is it failing so miserably? First of all, I mean, I'm not saying it's the fault of the NBCC that the campaign is failing. That means it falls down on the people, I guess. But just a few things. What do you think? Like what sort of approach should the church, being a very influential body, in our state, how should there be another route we go taking? Because I do feel that the clean election campaign is very important. It sounds bad, but it's been failing miserably.
This is gonna sound funny. I think it's failing because, like for example, I don't know why it's failing. In the sense that
very cryptic.
I think I'm not informed enough. Or I'm not involved enough. So while on paper and in a setting like this, I say I support clean election.
Right.
I'm actually doing nothing about it.
Right.
And I'm not even following what NBCC is doing. And maybe that's the reason why.
That's nice that you can admit that, and I will too. I have no idea what they're doing.
I think the only two things that I have done for clean election is some years ago, somebody came as part of the clean election and got a few minutes and spoke to the congregation about clean election.
Okay.
And recently, they contacted me, through me, contacted somebody in our church to support clean election.
Okay.
That's about it.
Okay.
That's my involvement with clean election, and I'm sorry to say that I have not really been involved, and maybe it's for people like me. It's not.
Maybe it's like we're all part of the problem instead of just because definitely not blaming the NBCC for it, but it is like, I mean, everyone can see the situation we're in politically is like pretty much a nightmare.
But can I just add one?
Sure.
One
Go
more
ahead.
thing. I think the church has to be careful about how it aligns itself with what we call worldly power, which would be political power, military power. I think there's always a great temptation for the church to want to be partners with
the powers that be.
Exactly. And I mean, when we look at the life of Jesus and the temptations that are mentioned in the Bible, one of them has to do with this, with political power, and how he was offered power and authority over the nations of the world, and how he refused that. And but I think we keep falling into this thing again and again, and how we believe that solution can come through a political party or through a candidate, and I simply don't believe in that. I am all for good elections, and I pray for leaders, pray for political leaders.
Right.
But I am under no illusion that the problems of the world will be solved through some political party or through some candidate. I just don't believe that. If that were so, I think Jesus would have started a political party, but he did not.
Right.
Because I think that is not how what we call the kingdom of God, God's government on this earth. I don't think that's how it comes. And so I think it comes in a different way.
Yeah.
And so I think the church has to be aware that it keeps falling into this temptation of wanting to control, manipulate, maybe, and maybe even use the government as a tool for its own agenda.
Right.
And so earlier you were asking about church and politics, and so for me, I think it is Martin Luther King Jr. who said something like, I don't remember the exact quote,
Right.
but he said something like how the church is not a servant of the state, where it is controlled by the state, but also the church is not the master of the state,
Right.
where it tries to control the state. But he says the church is the conscience of the state, and so it is like we are separate, but we still have
But
a
at-
voice.
yeah.
You know,
So-
and we call the
Right.
government and people in authority back to, like, hey, you know, to the way of justice, the way of peace, the way of truth. I think that's the role of the church, to be that voice.
Right. I can agree to that. That like they should be the guiding force,
Right.
right? But not by directly meddling in
Right, exactly.
politics
Yeah,
and such. Which leads me to one of one of the more contentious issues, which is our Prohibition Act,
Okay.
which for whatever reason it is, like, the church has said that it is the government's decision, right? That
Right.
they've lifted the ban. I mean, they've imposed the ban, and
Yeah.
whether or not to lift the ban. But like we said, although they might not be directly sort of saying or getting in between and saying don't lift the ban, we do know, like I keep repeating, the influence that it has on our state,
Yeah.
and the sort of I'll just say it like how I feel it is. The political parties are basically afraid of the backlash that they'll receive because of the stance the church takes on it,
Yeah.
and that for the fact that we are all, Christians in our state,
Yeah.
majority. What is your take on this?
It is unfortunate that people are afraid of the church. Three things I would like to say in relation to prohibition. The first one is I want to be careful, and I think people should be careful
Right.
of saying lift prohibition. It's just
Definitely.
and prohibition, because I think we have to be careful. It's a huge. It'll be a huge move, and for us to so maybe casually, carelessly say something like that, because sometimes people say, "Be careful what you wish for.
Right,
You might
right,
just get it.
right.
Be careful what you pray for. Even
Yeah,
you
yeah,
might just get
yeah.
it." And we don't know how society will respond to the lifting of prohibition.
Right.
Will it be better? Will it be worse? I don't know enough to comment with so much authority and certainty on something like that. It may just be worse. And Nagas don't have a very good track record of handling our freedoms very well. I mean, we talk about 4-lane highway. When our roads get better, accidents increase. And so privileges and freedoms, I don't know how well we handle those things.
Yeah, fair enough.
Somebody was recently talking about how in Nagaland, like every family can talk about a case of alcoholism or drug addiction in the family. And so how we don't know how to manage, our freedoms, and so it is a problem. And so we have to be careful that we don't just say it has to be lifted.
Right. I agree with that.
The second thing is, I think the church has made its stance very clear on prohibition, and I don't think people should keep blaming the church for prohibition.
Right.
I mean, what do we expect the church to do? If not voice out and speak its convictions. And so if our church leaders have this conviction that prohibition must be in place, allow them the permission to speak their mind,
Right.
and speak what's in their hearts. And if that is their conviction, let them stand on it. And so for me, the church has made its stance clear, and I think the government should have enough guts to make its own decision. Take the opinion of the church, but make your decision. So how the church has made its decision known. My wife and I today, we were talking about I think in the 1500s, Henry VIII, King of England. married, wanted to divorce his wife, but the church obviously frowned upon divorce and did not allow it. But he wanted the church to bless his divorce, and he went to great lengths to make the church bless his divorce. So it's like, I want to do this, but I want the church
bending
to
it to
bless
his will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it ultimately led to the split in the church.
And the Bible also, right?
proclaimed himself, leader of
yes.
So anyway, and so it's like, if the government is thinking like we want to lift prohibition, but we want the church to agree with us, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should be waiting. Anyone should be waiting for the church to change its mind and like, listen, hear them out.
Right.
But whoever is in power, like, you make the decision. And if the church is going to threaten you, and
No, what I mean to say that they're scared. That I'm not implying that they're actually scared of the church. I'm just saying they're scared of the domino effect, which would be obviously them losing power, and not
votes,
through
maybe
the
votes.
votes. Not meaning to say that they feel that church is threatening them. It's just that the consequence of.
I understand that.
Yes.
So,
that's what I just wanted to ask.
But I said 3 points.
Please.
The third thing, in relation to prohibition is, having said all that about the church has made its decision, and also how we have to be careful about lifting prohibition. I do believe that there is a certain level of hypocrisy when the church thinks that by implementing prohibition that we can solve the problems of our society.
Exactly.
I think there is hypocrisy in saying. I mean, I have heard church leaders say that the day Prohibition Act came into force, that is the day we achieve great victory over evil. And for me, that is like so, like, I mean, like, you're not in touch with reality.
Right.
Evil is not found in a whiskey bottle or in a can of beer. Evil is found in the hearts of people. And so righteousness has to do with the heart. And I may sound like I'm preaching, but I just want to say this, that, when we practice this kind of Christianity, that we remove what is a potential problem, it would be like in the Garden of Eden, like God removed the second tree. So, and then it's like, everything is good, everything is holy, everything is righteous, there is no problem.
Right.
But that option has been removed.
basically,
That option has been removed. And so, I think there is some kind of hypocrisy in thinking that we can, bring in righteousness by removing this thing. Let me give you this really great quote. I have to check my phone again. Martin Luther, who's a hero of our Protestant church and reformer, great reformer. He said, "Do not suppose that abuses are eliminated by destroying the object which is abused. Men can go wrong with wine and women. Shall we then prohibit wine and abolish women? The sun, the moon, and the stars have been worshipped. Shall we then pluck them out of the sky?" And so I think the solution is not to remove that object which is being abused, but it is teaching
To
people,
address the
equipping-
issue, right?
and addressing issues of the heart.
That is indeed such a wonderful quote. And I just want to add a few things to the discussion here. Like, you mentioned the hypocrisy. I think one of the reasons that a fair number of the public are have some sort of like trust issues or just a disconnect is because there is quite a lot of hypocrisy going on within our state. And unfortunately, even when it comes to the church, one being, I feel, my personal opinion is that, like you said, just by making sure that the prohibition is in place, you cannot tell me that you don't know how much liquor flows in our state, what the situation is, and like you said, alcoholism and So the issue is not really the prohibition, like we just discussed with that, that quote, just capping it off perfectly. But so the hypocrisy lies there, and another thing is, which I'm not a fan of, is like demonizing it to that extent where you're sort of, you can't. I mean, I feel like you can't make one sin. It actually, I just want to, on the record, I just want to know about this because, like, unfortunately, not too well versed with the Bible, but does it actually say do not drink?
There are.
Well, I know it says don't be a drunkard and
Yeah.
don't that, but
Well, there are Bible verses, especially in the Old Testament, that warn a lot of the dangers of
alcohol.
not just drunkenness but alcohol itself and wine, and like, for example, do not look upon wine. And these are proverbs, for example, in the book of Proverbs, which are wise sayings, and giving good advice to people.
Right.
And so I think there is wisdom in that. But if you are looking for a Bible verse that
Explicitly says, no, but why I was just asking that question is because, I mean, fair enough, what you just mentioned, it is wise sayings, it's not a good idea, but even if it does say, like, how are you making this such a bigger sin? Because that's what I feel in our society, it has become like such a bigger sin, when in one of the, I mean, the primary 10 commandments is like, do not steal, and these are the people who steal, that everyone knows about. And that hypocrisy is something that I feel is very evident in our society today. People talk about this a lot.
I don't know, but so I cannot speak with absolute authority.
Right.
My very blunt opinion would be, we all struggle with some form or the other of hypocrisy.
Definitely, as a human,
yeah.
Yes.
And so everybody has some kind of issue, and maybe we want to, number one, target the more obvious sins, and so gossip, which is also very dangerous,
Yes.
may not be such a big issue, but maybe drunkenness, which is very obviously seen, like when a man is drunk and stumbling.
Correct.
And so we want to address that. The more obvious sins, faults. The other thing is, I think we all have a tendency to make, what we say, having a problem with somebody who sins differently. And so what I don't struggle with, but I see someone else struggling with that, like,
Very easy to judge.
I want to make that the main issue.
Yeah.
So I may not struggle with alcohol.
Right.
So like, I'm okay with that, and so I'm clean there. And so I want to judge the other person who's having an issue with that. But I don't want to address the issue that I'm struggling with.
Right.
Right. And I think we all have that. And so maybe the church has been like that. And so alcohol has become. I think human beings, we all look for a villain. We all want to blame someone. Blame
and
something.
a hero also.
And we want to demonize something.
Yeah.
And alcohol is that. And another one is homosexuality. Which,
I mean, I was just coming to that, and I was going to say, we're touching on a lot of things which I hope, like, I'm not putting you in such an uncomfortable position, but, you being comfortable enough to talk about a lot of things is something which I appreciate. Very honestly speaking, I wish a lot of leaders, whether it be spiritual leaders like you guys, or whether it's political leaders or whoever it may be, leaders in our society, to be more open and talk about things that need addressing. There's so many issues, like the one that we're going to touch on, which is very a big sensitive issue, which anyway, but I basically I want to just tell you that I appreciate this, that you're comfortable enough in your own skin to talk about it. And I hope that our other leaders also follow suit. Not to say that no one else is doing it, but homosexuality, this is another very tricky issue,
Right.
and the church has been, at least in our state, has been just dancing around this issue and not addressing it fully.
I think so.
Which
yeah.
it's high time, regardless of what you want to say, yes, no, or this, that, we can't just avoid this issue.
Yeah.
It needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
It has to be addressed. So I'm glad that you're one that at least can talk about it, even on a public platform like this. So just whatever your views are.
Yeah. Like you said, sensitive topic.
Yeah, definitely.
One person or the other is somehow offended or hurt whenever we talk about these things. I just want to make it clear that I don't speak with a sense of absolute authority or
Right, right.
I know it all. But I remember some years back I was part of a group of church leaders, mostly pastors, and somebody from out of state had come, and he wanted to meet church leaders in Dimapur, and he wanted to talk about the issue of homosexuality. And a very senior leader, he stood up and he said, we don't know anything about this because we are church workers. We work in the church where we don't face this issue. And so, this is not something that we are used to. This is not something we have any knowledge about. And so we have nothing to say, basically. And I was very saddened and disappointed because number one, I'm sure that that pastor, like in his congregation, there are people who would identify themselves as homosexuals, or he is just maybe living in denial,
refusing to. Yes.
What's happening. And more and more people, even in our society, are coming out. And for me, I don't know if I can speak on this issue like with a flow, as you say.
Right.
I'll just share my scattered thoughts. I am not one of those church leaders who think that homosexuality is one of the main problems of our society. I don't believe in that. I know there are church leaders who think that homosexuality is destroying the fabric of our society. I don't believe that. I think there are bigger issues. I think corruption is one. I think extortion is another. I think there are big issues like that.
Right.
I don't think homosexual people are out to destroy our society. I don't think they are the devil's agents trying to destroy lives. I don't think all homosexual people are promiscuous. I know people who are gay and they are in very loving, committed relationships, and they are not going around with everybody, anybody.
Right.
And so unfortunately, I think people still think that every homosexual is like that, and just out to just pounce on everybody, and they're not like that. Maybe there are people like that, but there are straight people who are like that.
Right.
So the other thing is, for me personally, for us, we in our church we have publicly said that you are welcome. You are welcome to worship with us. There's a place for you. And what we have said is we don't want you to be there in the congregation, a homosexual, hoping that no one knows about you, hoping that the pastor doesn't find out. We have said, if you are like that, we want to know, and we still want you to know that you are welcome. It's not like once we find out, like, oh my goodness, like I can't believe you are here in church, like
Right.
It's not like that. It's not going to be like that. And so we see, when I see like a gay person, for example, or homosexual, I don't think we should see them as mission field, project. Somebody I must convert
And change
and then
into
come with an agenda to I think just like any other human being, just like any other person, there are people who just need to be loved and need to know the love of God just as much as me, you, anyone else. Just need to know that God loves us, and so like we have to stop seeing them as projects, as mission fields, as objects to be converted. I think there are persons who need love just like anyone else.
I mean that's on that last towards the end of your point, you made a very interesting comment. Welcoming everyone.
Yeah.
And that is supposed to be like, that is the essence of church, right?
Yeah.
Welcome everyone. We are all sinners.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
welcome.
Exactly.
You cannot, like I said, make one sin heavier or worse than the other. Like and
if the church is for people who
are perfect,
have no sin,
there's no point.
I would not be. I would be disqualified from my own church.
Right. We have touched on quite a few topics that are quite sensitive, and like I said, I appreciate that you are comfortable enough to talk about these. And
it's not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. I know. I may have landed you in a little bit of trouble. I
I'm
hope
smiling,
not,
but it's not easy.
Yeah, but just to round off all these talks on church related issues and topics, once again I'd just like to make this very clear that the reason that I address all these issues, and I know on screen and when people are watching, it may come across as like me pointing and trying to, but I feel
I actually didn't feel that at all from you. So
that's great, because like I feel that there's a lot of questions, like young people like myself or younger people or even elder people for that matter, but everyone in general have a lot of questions, and we also want to see the church do well. We also, but then there's unfortunately I'm just being honest, there's something missing, and I wish that it changes, and I feel through discussion sensitive topics that we always try and just brush off and sweep it, and then it becomes too big a mess in the end. Let's talk about things, right? And
can I share one thing?
Sure.
Church, you earlier I think you were talking about especially young people and connecting with the church.
Disconnect.
And sometimes maybe how the church is not relevant. I know that well-meaning people who love the church talk a lot about how the church must be creative and find creative ways to attract people, especially the young. And I'm all for that. And that sounds great, and it's a great idea. But then for me the question is like, okay, now what do we mean by creativity? And so when we begin to probe deeper and break it down like that, then it eventually comes down to music, entertainment, things like that. And that's where we part ways. That's where I disagree. So for me, if I have to use entertainment to attract people, I have to keep them entertained to keep them. And we can never compete with the entertainment industry. There's enough entertainment and great entertainment out there, and the church doesn't need to be another entertainment center.
Yes.
The church has a different calling, has a different purpose, and I think we should pursue that. And so creativity does not mean reinventing the wheel. We had a wheel of stone, and maybe it eventually led to a wheel made of maybe a wooden wheel, and then we put spokes and we put rubber and we put metal there, and radial, we have tubeless tire, we have alloy wheels, and so, but it is still a wheel. And so we take that wheel and we keep improving that wheel. We don't replace the round wheel with a square wheel. And so to say that instead of preaching, maybe why don't we show a movie? That is like reinventing the wheel.
Yes.
So for me, it's not like you don't have to remove preaching and bring a movie. Preach better. For me, it's like that. So learn to preach better. Learn to lead Bible studies better. And I think give people something that they will not find anywhere else. For entertainment, they can go there, but if they want something different,
Spiritual healing, yes.
then they come here, and so I think we have to be careful about, yes, church must be creative. And, what do we mean by that?
Yeah.
And
I have said that in the past, in the sense.
oh, sorry.
No offense taken, because like to each their own. Everyone has their own opinions, but I do feel that to a certain extent, the everyday sort of it becomes a little mundane. I'm just being honest, but I've seen some services that are a little more fun, and then it like you said, to retain these people, especially the youth, you do have to keep them entertained, and somehow manage to keep them there long enough for them to hear the word. But like I said, everyone's opinion is their own.
But that's interesting what you said. Sometimes it's mundane, sometimes it's boring, and for me it's okay. If church is boring, also it's okay, in the sense, when we always want to be like, always pumped up all the time in church, I think we have a problem. Somebody called it the false god of good feelings. The false god of good feelings, and how we always want to serve this god of good feelings all the time. So when I go to church, the pastor must always make me feel good, and maybe sometimes he has a very boring sermon, and I think we should just get used to it. But what's important is the routine. What's important is the discipline. So whether I'm entertained or not, whether it's a great sermon or not, I have this discipline to go, because it's good for my soul when I go there.
I agree with you. I was just on the point of like how the youths these days are totally distracted anyway. Like world full of distractions.
Absolutely.
And when they so on that note, just moving away from that, and I want to it'll be still a long conversation, but end on this very personal topic. And before we start, I just want to personally just tell you that I'm very grateful, first of all, that you're willing to talk about this, and that you're comfortable and again brave to talk about these issues that are very personal, very emotional, and basically it's with hardships in life. And by hardships, just to the audience, I'm talking specifically about personal losses. And in life, obviously it's a process, so everyone loses loved ones. That's a part of life. But there are circumstances which are tragic and much harder to deal with. And the fact that, like I said, I'm repeating myself, but I just want to make it very clear that I appreciate you being able to talk like this, and hope that other people who are listening can find some sort of comfort, or even learn another way of healing through what you're going to talk about. And it's something very personal. So just the two personal losses in your life, I don't want to call them losses also, but the two stories in your life that if you can just share.
Okay, I'm assuming one would be my father,
right.
who was shot and killed many years ago. I was a teenager in school, and I mean, it's totally unexpected. I remember I was at home doing my homework, and the news came. One of my cousins was shouting, and I didn't really hear what was going on, but I knew that my father had gone to drop my younger sister off for her tuition. And I thought, so in town there's been some shooting, and but later when we drove out to that area, that spot in Duncan Colony, seeing my father in a pool of blood inside his gypsy, I mean, I saw that with my eyes. And
you were how old?
I was a teenager. I think I was around 16. Totally numb. Like I didn't know how to respond to something like that. totally unexpected. And I mean, just we have experienced firsthand, just this violence in our culture, you know. Not just my father, but also my uncle,
Exactly.
his younger brother.
Yeah.
4 years later, in his own house around midnight, people came and shot him in front of his kids, his wife. And so these are things that we, sometimes we don't even know how to think about these things, to be honest.
Right.
Maybe other people have a very systematic way of dealing with these things. For me, I'm like, I'm numb when I think about these things. The only thing that I know and I feel I should respond in this way is finding a way to forgive people who have, I would like to say the word murder, murdered my father. Finding a way to forgive them, and it's not easy, but I know it's the right thing to do, and I know it's what Christ did for us, and as a follower of Christ, that's what I should do. And so,
Just for like, so that the people know, can you just about the situation, because your dad was a politician.
Yes, he was in politics.
Yes.
He was actually he was also the editor of an English weekly.
That was a weekly.
It was a
Okay,
weekly.
okay.
And I know that some of his writings were maybe,
Out there, like vocal,
very
and
vocal.
yes.
And I'm sure he ruffled a lot of feathers. I don't even know exactly why he was killed.
Like not for a particular like thing that he wrote or something, but
So I mean, I know it is political.
Yeah, political, obviously.
It is obviously political.
yes,
But exactly why I don't know.
pinpointed reason.
But after all this, we even found a note in his briefcase after he was killed, and he had received death threats. And I didn't see the letter, but I saw his letter addressing that, and how he was like basically mentioning how he has received death threats. And so he lived under that thing, and none of us knew what he was going through. But he did what he believed in. He lived his convictions and tried to live out his principles. I like to think of my father as maybe he was the conscience of our society,
Right.
and it was a way of, sadly, tragically, silencing
Yeah.
the conscience.
A bright light, and a very bright light.
Yeah.
Like
I'm sure he was not 100% right on everything, and people can disagree with him.
right.
But I think he was a conscience, and I think it is not just our loss, but I think it is and I think I can honestly say this. I actually believe that it was a great loss for the Naga people.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Not to get so deep into it, but just I too lost my father at a young age. I was around 18, 19, but 100% totally different circumstances, like prolonged illness and all that.
Yeah.
And for me, that was like up until then the most life-defining event that had happened in my life, like like in my young life, and it changed me forever.
Yeah.
And not to say that I became such a good person after that or anything like that, but it's made me who I am today. And like I said, we all lose people in life. That's the process of life. But when it's something that like you said, you were speechless, you didn't even know how to react.
Yeah.
How was your you've already said it a little bit, in the sense you were just numb to it, but how was your maybe your healing process through that, being not just losing someone, but in such a manner, the way that it happened?
I think we've always had very strong family support. Cousins, aunties, obviously uncles also during that time, although I've lost a lot of my uncles now. And later on, faith, church. And I think all of these factors have contributed in this journey of healing. I am sure that there are still areas that I'm not even aware of that have been affected by this, and but one of the things is like how do I say this? Fatherlessness is a big issue, and there are things as in my late teens, in my early 20s, there are things that I would imagine I would have had discussions with my father,
100%.
which I obviously never had, and whether it is about our people, whether it's about society, politics, God, life, occupation, nothing. Everything has been taken away, and also on the other hand, like how current fathers, like how important our roles are, just being there, because I knew what it's like to grow up. I know what it's like to grow up without a father. So
100%. I totally agree with you there. Like even this late into life, you sometimes can't help what like happened ages ago for both of us, but can't help wondering. Sometimes you just think like, oh, what if he was here, and like how would we talk about this, like, or the discussions, and it does lead you to think about and sort of put that emphasis on the need for you to be there for your children. And it's not that their fault that it happened, but it did happen, and I think it's nice to see that fathers are making an effort these days. I mean, not to say that they didn't, but like I like to see young fathers who are very involved in parenting, and it's changing, and it's a nice thing to see. It's really nice, and on that note, like you're the second.
So the second loss is obviously our son that we lost 2 years ago, June 2020, and well, since the time he was in the womb, doctor diagnosed some issues. He was born with a tumor, so 2 days old, he had a major surgery, and everything was fine until he was just about to reach his second birthday, and he fell sick, and we didn't know what it was. Doctors did not really diagnose properly what it was, and we found out that it was cancer. So his second birthday, a few days after his second birthday, it was diagnosed. We were in Hyderabad and diagnosed with cancer, and so the whole 2018 was treatment in and out of hospitals, chemotherapy, another major surgery, and he went into remission. So he was absolutely fine after that, very healthy, brilliant young boy, and we celebrated his third birthday. It was such a happy occasion. It was like he's cancer free, and
Right.
but a few months after his third birthday, the cancer came back, and again started going for. So 2019 again treatment started, and for a brief moment they could not find the cancer anymore again.
Okay.
And then it came back, and so the third time it was pretty bad, and so the whole of 2020, the first half of 2020 was he was really sick, and he died in June 2020, and I have not known pain like that, and grief, and just a sense of utter helplessness. Like you are like, I would do anything for him to live, but I can't do anything, and just that sense of helplessness, but not hopelessness. And this is where our faith comes in, hope and faith. But the sense of helplessness, this anger, this inability to do anything about it. It's just a horrible feeling. And for me, I think these past 2 years have just been, I mean, life is good. We love our daughter. She's amazing, but just living under this shadow of sadness.
I mean, like I said, not easy definitely to talk about these things, and as a father, like you know, like I can't even try and tell you, like, you know, I understand, because like I cannot, but just I had this, I mean, it's like every father's worst nightmare, I guess, but I had this dream when my son was a little younger, and then in the dream, I don't remember clearly, but basically we were separated in the sense either he was gone or I was gone, one of the two. And I was just in the dream, it was so, you know, those very vivid dreams, and I was just crying, and I was like, you know, wishing, like saying like I wish I can hold him once more, or like just tell him I love him. And when I woke up from the dream and he's lying next to me, and then I was just holding him tight, what I mean to say is that that was just a dream, and the kind of pain I went through in just that small period, like, so that I can't tell you, like, you know, how I feel for you, but it's so nice to, you know, hear you openly and, like, you know, like comfortable enough to talk about it, and I appreciate you. I just want to just like you said, the last 2 years have been basically under this shadow of, like, you know, sadness and what I'm sure like you question God also, like, you know, like in the sense, like, why is this happening to me, like, you know, what how hard were those times? I mean, I can only,
one of my prayers, obviously a lot of prayers went into you know, for the healing of our son. And one of my prayers was, God, I saw my father buried, you know, let me not bury my son. That was my prayer. And like a son should bury his father, and so like he should bury me, I should not bury him, you know.
yeah, a father should never.
And we did not see his healing in spite of all kinds of treatment, prayer, fasting, worship,
Everything.
so many churches all over the world, literally people in so many nations praying for him, and we still lost him. And those times are tricky. I mean, unless you are careful, you can just totally move away from God and
Lose it all. I mean,
and like how your faith is shaken, you can get offended with God. And so we have been intentional that, you know, we will still continue to believe that God is good, and that God did not put cancer on our son, and that God did not take him away. And so that is what we believe. It's not just a comforting thought, but that's actually what we believe. And we believe that when we grieve, God grieves with us. And so this is where the Christian faith really helped me, because I start thinking about God, and I think about other religions, and, you know, I don't criticize any religion, any religion, but in the Christian faith I find a God who also watched his son die on a cross. And so for me, I look at this God and I say, this is a God who understands me, because he knows what it's like to lose a son. And so this is a God I can worship. This is a God I can trust. And so that has been an anchor for us. And I have made mistakes after, you know, even losing our son, and I don't know how I handled grief well. Some people think I handled it well. Some people may think I didn't do it very well. But you know, that's we just try to live each day. Sometimes we think of him and cry. Sometimes we think of him and laugh. And we just miss him every day of our lives, every single day. But one thing that I think I should say this is, don't tell people it's okay, it's God's will. Like don't say that. It is not comforting, and it is not true. You know, it is God's will. People come and say, be strong, and this and that, and like don't say any of those things. We can just, one of the best things we can do is just sit quietly. Sit quietly and maybe just grieve with those who grieve.
Right.
Maybe the most we can say is, I'm so sorry, and I'm praying for you. And apart from that, you know, we don't have to come up with reasons and why this happened, why that happened. And you know, some people say maybe you did something wrong. You know, those are just not helpful at all.
I can just imagine what that those kind of comments.
Yeah. Even when people say, I understand.
Yeah, you really
With
can't.
all due respect,
You don't.
No,
Yeah.
you don't. Unless you lost a young child.
Exactly.
You don't.
That's what.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what you can't just say. People, I understand, and like it's like I said, we all lose people,
Yeah.
but there are some circumstances which are much different and much harder than what we go through or other people go through on a regular. So it's not like you can just say you understand, or you know, it's like that. I mean,
And that's why I love the church. It just, you know, with all its flaws and failures, at the end of the day, we try to
look
be there
out for each other.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, for me, that is like one of the most one of the best characteristics I like about church and what it's supposed to do. Of the many things it's supposed to do, is be there for each other, regardless of, like you said, the sins that you have and the shortcomings that you have. Just be there for each other. And like I know, you know, like your process of grieving, if you can even call it that, is still going on, and it'll continue. Like how I'll just speak on my behalf, but like both losing fathers at an early age, right? But in some way or sense, we continue to grieve for them, like not like how it was way back then, but it'll, because obviously we'll never forget them. They meant so much to us. And I don't mean to say, like, you know, like, are you going to distract yourself with other things to do and all, but how are you, like, you know, taking it? 2 years is fresh, I'm sure, like, you know, it's very like, you know, so how do you still, I don't even know, like, you know, like how to ask this question, but
we don't have a roadmap. We take each day as it comes.
Right.
I think there is not a single day that we don't think of him.
Of course.
But not every day is hard. You know, some days we just think of him fondly. Other days it's very hard. It's just like you
the
just break
emotional
down
days.
and, but there's, you know, to be honest, I don't know how people do it, but for us, there is no plan. There is no roadmap. You know, this is how we're going.
And then you get better by this.
It's, we just take each day as it comes. We do our best to, you know, to just love each other, love people around us, and when we make mistakes, forgive each other, and just appreciate the good things we have now. Always living with a hope based on our faith that one day we will see our son again.
That's beautiful. Going back to the earlier story about your father, and I think this would be the perfect way to sort of wrap up our podcast. It's like our podcast, besides, like, we like to promote people, obviously. We're all about promoting fellow Nagas, doing whatever they're doing, but one thing we like to promote is also positivity. And through all the hardships and the troubles and the tragedies that we face in life, I think somehow there's some sort of positivity we can bring out of it. And on account of like that, what just, I remember this, obviously I didn't attend, but I remember reading about it in the newspapers. I think it was the Morong Express and the Naga Forum for Naga Reconciliation, right? Was it a joint, some conclave sort of?
I know it was FNR.
Yeah, FNR was surely
yeah.
involved. Yeah, on morning. But anyway, I won't get there. But can you just tell us about the program, because you were a part of it and you spoke about forgiveness, and can you just tell us what that was about and sort of share a little bit about what you said?
I was actually in Hyderabad.
Okay.
And I was in the hospital actually. Our son was receiving chemotherapy, and Reverend Dr. Wati Iyer, he called me, and we knew each other from before. Obviously, he's a respected leader.
Right.
He called me and he mentioned that they are doing a program like this, and he wanted me to speak and kind of share testimony, and he even gave me the topic, the issue of forgiveness. And I think I struggled a little bit with that, like at a gathering like that, like what do I say, and feeling maybe small, but I said okay, and so I came up from Hyderabad. My family was still down there, but I came up and I attended the program, and to be honest, I did not prepare at all. I didn't have any notes. I didn't even go through what I was going to say. But I had been trying to live this life of forgiveness, and so I thought, I'm just going to stand up there and just speak for my life. Yeah. But then I was given, I think, about 5 minutes, and so I thought, okay, maybe if I don't jot some thoughts down, I may be all over the place and exceed my time limit. And so during the program, just before my turn came, I pulled out my phone and I just wrote down a few words, and so I stood there and I shared, and I think it just came from my heart, whatever I shared. And so this whole thing about forgiveness, for me, it's like there is no other way to live, and there is no other way to move on as individuals, but also as a people, unless we live lives of forgiveness. And now, forgiveness does not mean that wrong becomes right.
Right.
It doesn't. Wrong is wrong.
Yeah.
And murdering someone is wrong. Assassinating someone is wrong. And so wrong is still wrong. But we forgive people. And I believe forgiveness is a gift that we give to people freely.
Right.
And forgiveness
very powerful thing.
Forgiveness is never something that's deserved. Forgiveness is a gift. And so when someone forgives me, it's a gift that they give me.
Right.
And whether I receive it or not is up to me. And I think I receive it with humility. I receive it with some level of repentance. Not some level, but I receive it with repentance. And so for me, but for me, unforgiveness is toxic. Unforgiveness is like what I said in that program was, it's like drinking poison and hoping the other person will die. And so it's like poison, unforgiveness. And so we have to let that venom out, that poison. And forgiveness is for people. It's also for our own healing.
Yeah, I think you just said it best in the end. It's for you as well. It's not just about the other person that you're forgiving, right? I think it heals you when
absolutely.
There's a quote from that you might have forgotten, but I found it very nice. A small excerpt that I found on the online, and you said, "We cannot keep holding on to the past if we expect to take hold of the future." So I mean that is very beautifully put. And considering the last 5 minutes preparation that you had,
and as much as we want to live there and hold on to this grudge, like we have to we have to let go.
And letting go is like it doesn't mean like you're forgetting about it, or
absolutely
right.
Not. I mean, to clarify that.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean you forget.
100%.
So for me, like I've preached on series of sermons on forgiveness, and so I tell people it's not forget and forgive. but it's remember and forgive. You know, it's remember and forgive. And so letting go, that means you don't keep bringing it up again and keep accusing people of the same thing that you
blaming them and right.
forgiven. You know, you don't keep accusing people
Correct,
of that.
correct.
Thing.
Yeah.
You know, you remember. I mean,
Yeah,
mentally you remember, emotionally you remember. But
I mean, it takes a lot. Like we're just talking about to forgive.
yeah,
It takes a lot to let go, and by that again to clarify, not to just forget about it, but letting go of the situation of how you feel against that person, but not about the actual thing that happened. And I think that was like a nice way to end this podcast. I mean, there's so many things I'd like to keep continuing to talk about, but it was a pleasure having you here. I'm you know, like I said, I'm going to repeat myself over and over, but it's nice to have leaders who are vocal about you know, things that are on their mind and speak what's in their hearts. I mean, like it's important for us to hear that from people like you. So I appreciate that, and we're gonna end on the note of you giving a message. We have like a message to like just family and friends, and two messages. So one message is that, and second message is just to the Nagas in public, like in general, like just the Naga public.
okay, yeah. Well,
I
do want to thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure.
Happy to be part of this, but I must admit that I was, and maybe still is, very nervous, and I kind of kept postponing this.
Yes, you did. It took a very long time.
Yeah, and just really nervous. Like, I hope I make sense. Like, you know, what if I'm saying a lot of things and nothing makes sense? And you know, so even to our viewers, I hope I made some sense. But two messages.
Right.
First, you know, family and friends, and I believe I'm a very wealthy man, a very rich man, because I'm surrounded by just a lot of people who love me, people who have shown me a lot of grace in my life, and I think that makes me a wealthy man, a rich man.
Amen.
And so thank you to my family, friends, and also just to our Naga people in general. I think we have great destiny. I think to our Naga people, I mean, I'm a pastor, and so I have to say it like this, you know. There is absolutely no way forward for us without following the way of Christ. And I just want to remind everyone that, you know, just to study the life of Christ, to study his teachings, and shape our lives, be transformed by what he has said. We struggle, we fall. I have fallen many times, but we get up, we embrace his teachings, his lifestyle, and for me that is the only way forward. We talk about a lot of issues, but I just want to encourage everyone, just relook, you know, just have a fresh perspective of Jesus, his lifestyle again, and I just want to bless everyone with that.
Amazing. Thank you so much once again. I really had fun. This was a great experience.
I hope I made sense.
Yes. Amazing.
Thank you.